Nelson. Welcome to the first day of circulation. This is the second portion in Unit 3, Transportation and Respiration. Last week, whether you were in class or hopefully you had a chance if you were at home to go on and do some of the online learning, you learned about blood, the functions of blood, the parts of blood. This week, we're going to learn about, or the next 2 weeks, we're going to learn about how that blood circulates around your body, how the heart pumps it, the parts of the heart, the cardiac cycle, and how to keep our heart healthy. Blood vessels are the first thing we're going to start to talk about. Multicellular organisms rely on your circulatory system to bring the materials to the cells and to take those wastes away from the cells. So your circulatory system consists of the heart and blood vessels. If our heart were to stop beating, then our cells stop getting oxygen, waste would accumulate in our cells, and our death would occur within a few minutes. We're going to learn about the parts of the heart and the blood vessels and how that circulatory system works. So the first thing we're going to start with is those blood vessels. So there's three main categories of blood vessels: arteries and smaller branches of those called arterioles, capillaries, which is where the gas exchange is actually happening, and veins and venules, which return that blood back to the heart. Arteries and arterioles carry blood away from the heart towards the tissues. So a hint you can remember is sorry, I gotta get my pen here. Arteries away. And that is terrible writing. I'm gonna have to try to get a new stylus for next time. So arteries are carrying blood away from the heart. Most of the time, this blood that arteries are carrying is rich in oxygen. So it's got a high oxygen content. So most of the time, arteries are carrying oxygenated blood, with the exception of one artery in your body. Your pulmonary artery, which pulmonary always means lungs. And again, I'll apologize for my stylus. I'll work on this. The word pulmonary means lungs. So all your arteries are carrying blood rich in oxygen, with the exception of that pulmonary artery. Arteries branch out. So arteries are kind of thick. They branch out into smaller branches called arterioles, and that are about 0.2 millimeters thick. Arteries are made up of 3 layers. So they have a thick layer of smooth muscle that acts like an elastic. This allows arteries to expand and contract easily when the heart pumps blood. So I've got a virtual lab coming up for you in a couple of days. Hopefully we'll get brought back into class within enough time that we're able to actually do a dissection of a heart. And usually what I do is I have students kind of stick 2 fingers in and pull out. And you can actually really, really feel on large arteries like the aorta how kind of stretchy they are. So because the heart is pumping directly into arteries and arterioles, there's a lot of pressure. So they're under high pressure. They receive that blood from the pumping heart, so they have to be elasticy to expand to withstand that kind of pressure. The largest artery in our body is called the aorta, and it's about 2.5 millimeters wide. Capillaries are tiny branches. These are 1 cell thick. So our arteries carry blood away from the heart. Those branch into smaller branches called arterioles, and arterioles branch into capillaries. And their main function is to exchange materials with tissues. Diffusion, osmosis, and active transport will be the way that those capillaries exchange with each of the cells. Most of the time it's diffusion, high concentration in the blood, low concentration in the cells, and things typically move across. Our capillaries connect arterioles, those small branches of the arteries, to the small branches of the veins that are called venules. Capillaries have access to all the body tissues. They're everywhere. So often I'll talk about the circulatory system being like the highway system, right? You've got your big main branches like your number 1 highway. Those are your arteries, and your main arteries like your aorta, and your main vein like your vena cava. Then there's smaller branches. Those are your kind of roads like 18th and Richmond and Victoria, and those branch into smaller kind of roads. And the capillaries are the driveway that takes you to each individual house or each individual cell in your body. The walls of the capillaries are only 1 cell thick. So this is thin enough that red blood cells can pass through single file. They have kind of sphincter muscles, those circular muscles are at the entrance to each capillary. These sphincter muscles can be closed off or opened up to help regulate the blood flow to an area or the capillary beds, networks of capillaries as needed. These sphincter muscles are what also would kind of open and close to dilate and constrict your blood vessels when we maintain our homeostasis for temperature as well. In order to return blood back to the heart, we have veins and venules. They take the blood from the body back towards the heart. So arteries away, veins are going to go towards the heart. These typically carry blood that's rich in carbon dioxide. So arteries take blood rich in oxygen. At the cells, at the capillaries, they give that oxygen away to the cells and they pick up carbon dioxide from the cells and carry that back towards the heart. The only exception here is the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein is the only vein in the body that carries oxygenated blood back towards the heart, and we'll talk about that more in a future lesson. Veins and venules have similar structures to arteries, but they contain less smooth muscle, so they're not quite as elasticy because the pressure is very low compared to arteries. So veins and venules rely on skeletal muscles, so your muscle contractions when you do things like walk, and valves to keep the blood flowing back towards the heart. Veins and venules contain about 75% of your blood. The arteries have about 20% of the blood, and the capillaries about 5%. In total, each human has about 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels. If you stretch them all out in a straight line, you would wrap them around the equator about 2.5 times. Valves allow blood to only flow back towards the heart when they're open. When they're closed, they prevent that backflow. So if you've ever seen a soldier at a Remembrance Day service, or when they're at attention for a long time, or if you're involved in kind of choir and have to stand still, often you're told to wiggle your toes inside your boots. This is because our skeletal muscles, the squeezing of our muscles as we walk, help to return blood back to the body. If you're standing still for a long period of time, there's no pump that helps to pump the blood back towards the heart. So if you're standing still for a long period of time, sometimes the blood can pool at your feet and you'll actually pass out. So often soldiers will take a knee, or sometimes if they just wiggle their toes inside their boot, that'll create enough kind of squeezing of those skeletal muscles to return the heart blood back towards the heart. If your valves in your veins don't work properly, it can cause that can be caused by varicose veins. So these are faulty valves in your veins, and the blood actually starts to pool inside some of these veins. Some of this is genetic. So if it runs in your family, you're just going to get them. And some of it can be, treated by a doctor. They'll inject a saline solution to kind of close those veins up. They can be very painful, but obviously keeping your weight low and exercising regularly will help prevent it. When we get to those capillaries, there's different materials that are exchanged at those capillaries. So what materials do capillaries exchange with the tissues? So this is oxygen, carbon dioxide, hormones, nutrients, nitrogenous waste, and in some cases, white blood cells. So if we scroll down to the diagram I have here, oxygen is going to go into the cell from the capillary. Carbon dioxide will be high in the cell as it's made during cellular respiration, and it'll diffuse out back into the blood or the capillaries. Hormones are going to go each way. Some hormones will be made in certain cells and then carried by the blood to other target cells or organs. Nitrogenous waste, they'll diffuse out of the cell and into the capillaries, and nutrients like our glucose, the things we talked about in the digestion unit, will diffuse from the bloodstream back into the cell. Hopefully you found that helpful. Your tasks for today is task 7. Task 7 is on page 6 in your booklet. And this actually goes with a cutout activity I have. I'm going to post that under today's materials. So you're welcome to print off that sheet and then cut and paste it under each of the headings: artery, vein, capillary, or what you can do is just write them under the correct heading. And task 8's on page 7. Just talks about describing in your own words, once you've had a read through the notes and watch the videos, the importance of valves in the veins and venules, and that's, you know, simple diagram of what the blood vessel network would look like. This is going to look really similar to the picture I had up a couple of slides ago. And task 9, this is on page 8. This is a chart for you to fill in, not fit in. And what I'm asking you to do in this circumstance is just to kind of indicate whether arteries flow towards the heart or away from the heart. Veins, same thing, towards or away from the heart. Whether valves are absent or present in arteries, veins, or capillaries. Whether the oxygen content is high or low on average. You can certainly include the exception. Same with carbon dioxide, whether they're really elastic, blood pressure is high, medium, or low, and kind of the thickness of the walls. If you've got any questions, feel free to either email me, call me, or chat, post your questions in that chat forum on Teams. Thanks very much.